So today I wanted to go over the top 3 stacks I recommend, judging off what we've seen so far through 3 weeks. And I think someone said it at the beginning of the stream. It's just, can we get a 0 RB button on Fantasy Cruncher? Impossible, right? But that's exactly how we feel. Running backs don't do anything in this league. 0, nothing. The highest scoring running back this weekend was the Martez Carter clown, but nobody played that guy, right? I don't think nobody played that guy. I don't think it was even, was he, I didn't see anyone. Cameron Artis-Payne was the guy that scored the most, technically. 17 fantasy points, never happening. Dunbar, maybe 17 fantasy points, not happening. It's just there's nothing at running back. So, and then when you look at wide receivers and see all the actual scores there, it's just like, okay, Cam Phillips. We saw Trey McBride. If you ran back the Houston-Tampa Bay game, you saw Jalen Tolliver. All right, cool. We saw all these guys, and just like, all right, I can dig it, dude. And all those guys scored over 17, by the way. You had Phillips, McBride, Parham, Tolliver, Proel. Like, there were so many guys, and I was like, all right, cool. In other words, don't ever play a running back if you don't have to, right? Like, you have the two wide receiver spots, and then you have flexes, but I'll just continue playing wide receivers. I'm not even gonna bother. And it just led me to kind of, because I know in NFL we sometimes include the running back. And I was like, all right, we could just transfer our NFL stuff to XFL. But if running backs aren't doing anything, and we already talked about it, there's not gonna be a Zeke or a McCaffrey in this league. I don't think we should be playing them. And I'll talk about the 3 stacks, and I'll talk about reasons why. Again, I'll rank them, but spoiler alert, none of them include running backs. It's actually crazy. So where in NFL, I think you could make a case for those guys, especially guys like CMC, Kamara, Zeke, all this stuff. So all these guys. So I think it's going to differ just a little bit, but there are 3 stacks that are clearly ahead of everything else in XFL so far that I think you guys will enjoy. Knacker, thank you for the 12 months, man. Lippy came in 45th in the 50K to first yesterday in XFL. Stud, baby. Stud, man. The first stack we'll talk about, which I think is probably the best stack. If you guys remember in NFL, I think the best stack currently is probably the 4-man game stack. Quarterback, 2 receivers, or whether it's 2 pass catchers, whether it's a tight end or a running back or whatever. And then 1 coming back. That would be 4 total guys, including the quarterback. And that's a game stack, right? In XFL, kind of the same thing, but because we have less games, and I don't know if I want to put too much stock onto one game or into one game. Again, the people that can correctly predict the fillers with the smallest stack will naturally just have higher lineups, but it'll be the 3-man stack, but it's a 3-man game stack. I think yesterday it was very clear who those guys were, right? You had Cam Phillips. You had Phillip Walker to Cam Phillips, and then you ran it back with Tolliver, right? I think that was a 3-man stack all the guys at the top end had, right? That's the one everyone had up top, and it's just like, okay, well, kind of obvious, right? Because those guys were the highest scoring trio, I guess. But it's a game stack, and it worked exactly how it was supposed to work, right? Houston got up a lot. Tampa Bay had to come back. They pass. Tolliver was the guy, right? Tolliver was the guy. So those 3, I think having the 3, it's the equivalent to the 4-man stack, the 4-man game stack in NFL. I just think the 3-man stack in XFL, because of how many games there are, is probably better. And I think Dark Manaluk, who took down the 100K, did have a 3-man, and it was that same 3-man. Walker, Phillips, Tolliver yesterday. So I think that's clearly the first one. And you could do this with any game, really. You could do this with any game. I'm almost tempted, and I don't know if you guys do this too, to kind of have just one trio of just like every possibility, right? Like I wouldn't probably do all 8 quarterbacks, but if you wanted to pick 6, and then obviously your favorite ones have just more of like the Phillip Walkers to Cam Phillips, right? Because that was the chalky stack yesterday. Just have more of those guys. Or more of those stacks, more of those trios But maybe start off with all of them at least once, twice, or 3 times. And then since, you know, Walker and Phillips are much better, I'm going to have those guys a ton more. So I think that makes sense. Zoo York, what's up, man? How's it going? The second best stack, and it's funny because in NFL, this is the first one, will be the 4-man game stack, right? And yesterday, if you were to do the whole Houston thing again and say, I want to have, you know, again, Walker to maybe Phillips and, I don't know, Phillips and Lewis maybe? Sure, why not, right? I think Phillips and Lewis could have worked. I think, I think it's, I don't think anyone else even had a decent score for you to put up there, right? But you could have done that. I don't think I wanted to go to any of the running backs. I don't think they're worth it. So I think Walker, Phillips, Lewis, and then running it back with, again, Tolliver would have probably worked too. I saw guys in the top 10 doing that one as well. And again, if you wanted to do this with any other team, you could also do this too. The only thing about this particular stack and why I don't like it as much as the 3-man is because, I don't know, so far we haven't had, and yeah, there will be versions of this. So this kind of goes back to 2 years ago in NFL where we had the 5-man stack working a ton and the 4-man stack working a ton. And it's, well, 5-man stacks, when it works, it's much better. But the 4-man stack is going to work way, way more in NFL. Same thing here in XFL. It's like when the 4-man stack works, it's way better than the 3-man stack. Just how often is that going to work? There's only 4 games every single weekend, right? There's only 4 games. So you don't have that many possibilities. Whereas in NFL, you have, I don't know, 10, 12 games. You have much more chances, depending on what week it is in NFL, obviously. So for this one, I only like the 3-man better than the 4-man because you don't have to rely, like you're just relying on that one team almost, that one game. But what if it doesn't shoot out, right? What if it doesn't shoot out? Also, what if there's no second good receiver on the same team? That's also a problem, something that also could happen. For example, this Houston team, their second best receiver had only 10 points. So you would have had the what, 48, the 50 from Cam Phillips, and then 10 from Lewis, which is technically not horrible, but it's a strong possibility. It's not always that 2 of them go ham, right? So for the people yesterday that had Walker to Phillips, great. The people that yesterday that had Walker to Phillips and Lewis, tough, because Lewis didn't do much. Phillips did everything. So that one's pretty tough. Everyone just got screwed because Cardale Jones had a horrible game. I mean, it happens. Even in NFL, it happens. Even the good quarterbacks have underperforming games. It happens. And you have to kind of treat it as a stack, right? You don't have to treat it as one quarterback, or it's not just what Philip Walker did, or not just what Cardale Jones did. It's how did the stack do? Because if he does bad, all the receivers do bad, and you have to treat it like that. So what are the probabilities that he does bad? It's what are the probability that the stack just doesn't perform? And we've talked about that in NFL before. Well, I guess we could eventually talk about it. What are the odds for something like this to happen just XFL? But I don't know. Yeah, I think I still favor the 3-mans over 4-mans, and you still have to differentiate your stacks because just how they went ham this week, they could very well underperform next week compared to their price tags, right? And they were already, Walker and Phillips were already 11K plus. You know what I mean? So I don't know. West Coast, love the show, baby. Best 6 months so far. Appreciate that, family. Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. And then my third and final stack, which I think it's still viable, and it's very possible this could win too. We saw it in a game yesterday as well. I think it was the DC game, right, where DC only had 9. They lost 39-9. Like, what happens in those games? My third favorite stack is probably just a 3-man alone from the same team. So if we wanted to go back to that Houston team and say Philip Walker to Cam Phillips and Lewis, not running it back with anyone, there's a possibility, because we've seen so far through 3 weeks that defenses can score touchdowns and can shut down people. We've already had a shutout in this league. You know what I mean? DC scored 9 freaking points yesterday, or before yesterday, or whatever it was. And that That's kind of bad. It was yesterday night. That sucks, dude. That's actually not very good, dude. So what happened in that case where you game stacked that game, whether it's 3-man or 4-man, and one guy from the other team, because they didn't score anything, just didn't do much, which is a strong possibility. Again, there's only 4 games. You have to kind of account for this. So my third favorite stack is probably just picking the very best team you like, the best trio of players from the same team. Obviously, this is not going to include running backs because running backs don't do anything in this league. We've already talked about that, right? So again, going back to the Houston, it would be Walker to Phillips and Lewis. I think so kind of judging by what we've seen the first 3 weeks, it's a bunch of passing game, right? Quarterbacks having 40 plus attempts every single week, it feels like. I think receivers just getting all the there's always that one guy, the Nelson Spruces of the world, the Cam Phillips of the world. These guys are going to have an insane amount of targets every single week. But you still can have secondary guys. It'll lead you to be different. It'll lead you to be contrarian. It'll lead you to have a stack if the team scores 40, which yesterday teams did. This weekend these teams did. You're going to have a very good now, you want to get a little bit different from the game stackers and don't want to have the same Walker to Phillips and Lewis or Walker to Phillips and Tolliver coming back. You can just have the same team and not run it back with anyone. It'll still get you different. It's still a stack. It'll still get you some upside. You can still get top 1% scores. Again, yesterday, there were guys in the top 5 that had 3-man team stacks alone and did very, very well. So, and if you go back to week 2, you go back to week 1, you'll see the same thing, man. You'll see the same thing. McBride had a hella game at 2% owned. He definitely did. He definitely did. And that's going to continue happening. That's going to continue happening. I mentioned on the podcast, I said, in XFL, there's still an edge this early on because even through three weeks, like projections haven't caught up to what, you know, these guys' workloads should be, or how we can accurately project these, or what a matchup truly really means for anyone else. There's no sample. 3 weeks of sample isn't a big enough sample, right? I think it's gonna work in a unique way in this league because there aren't that many teams. So like we will get the repeat matchups or whatever. We will see teams face another team again or whatever. So maybe that is gonna come into play this season or whatever. But I don't know. I think there's still an edge. I think if we focus on stacking, focus on the right stacking. If I had a recommendation and I had to rank these stacks, I think it would be exactly how I presented them. I think the 3-man game stack would be number 1. I think the 4-man game stack would be number 2. And then I think the 3-man team stack would be number 3. And I'm not even sure if that's even up for debate, right? I think that should be the standard across the industry. UNC had said he's been doing 3-man so far, has worked pretty well for him. I think for the most part, everyone is doing 3-mans, and the way you get 4-mans per se, and if you're optimizing or whatever, using FC to do these, I'd say set up for 3-mans, and I'll show you guys, I guess next week we'll go over how to properly set these up. We'll talk about groups again, we'll talk about whatever, but set up for 3-mans in all lineups, and if a 4th happens to fall in that lineup when you're optimizing, perfect. When you're crunching and it happens, and you have a 4-man, fine. But don't force 4-mans, right? Don't force 4-mans. But if it happens, great. You have a 4-man stack, a 4-man game stack. Fantastic. I don't know about anything else. You also probably want to limit your 4-man team stacks because that might happen by accident too. But we'll get to settings and how to set this up in future streams. But those clearly, I think, are the number 1, number 2, and number 3 stacks for XFL. And if you're following that, you should have had a pretty decent 1, 2, and 3 weeks so far.